many of you heard about this in the news lately? That the 8th billion person has been born. The 8th billion, the 8th billion, 8 billionth person. That's right.
It's hard to say.
Don't get to say that number very often, so it's almost adjusting to it. But the 8 billionth person, put the on the 8. Anyway, not that bit. Has been born, and this is really incredible because I don't know how true this is, but they've looked. I'm not sure if it was the BBC or if it was Sky, but they've tried to look for the 8 billionth person who was born. Now, how do you possibly confirm this? But they reckon they were talking to this person and they are the 8th billionth person. Anyway, I'm probably completely waffling here, but there are people who have looked into this to try and track these people down. But regardless of that, what is really interesting, and this is what we'll be talking about today, is the fact that it just represents a huge amount of diversity, language, culture, ethnicity, and so many different people, but human beings. And we're an incredible breed. We're such a precious breed. And it doesn't matter the colours that we come in. It doesn't matter the languages that we talk in. We're all the same. So, Lesley, tell us more about this, because the 8 billionth person, you can probably say it better than me. You've been looking into this, haven't you?
I have, Gareth. Good morning to you. It's good to see you. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? 8 billion people, and yeah, imagine being named that 8 billionth person, just like crazy stuff. But I was fascinated. The BBC produced a little video about sort of population growth in celebration of the 8 billionth person yesterday, and they were saying that if you named every single one of those people 1 a second, it would take you 253 years to name the whole world. That's how many people.
That would presumably be having no toilet breaks. It would be having no sleep breaks. It would be from now till basically doing nothing apart from that.
It's so true. There's
Imagine
no time
that's a
to cut
radio
the tea.
show.
But yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it, to think about that. And in one respect, it's just a big number. And like you say, we're all the same. We're all human beings, but all completely different at the same time. And I think that's the thing that's made my head explode a little, imagining the fact that every single one of those people is an individual who is unique and who has a unique story, unique family, unique background, the language that they speak, the culture that they live in, their experience. It's like every single one of those people is a kind of individual, unique person.
The other thing that is incredible is that it's taken, they were saying that going from 1 billion to 8 billion, and I hope I've got my figures right here, it's taken like something like 35 years, maybe 40 years. But they reckon that because people are living longer, to go from 8 billion to 9 billion, it will take, I think they said, I wish I'd have wrote these down. It won't take long anyway.
I think it's only 11 years. It's something like 11 years or something like that. But they reckon by the time we get to 10 billion, population will start to decrease.
I have it here. So they say that it could take 15 years to reach 9 billion. And the UN doesn't expect that we will reach 10 billion until 2080. But they're saying that people living longer, but what you will see naturally is a fall in the world's population eventually. And it's really interesting. If you have a look, there's loads of articles on this about why that would be. And of course, there's different countries, different healthcare and all that kind of stuff. But tying this back to Christianity, because I haven't actually said where Lesley's from. She's from Agapé UK, if you don't know. And they're all about these conversations about Christianity and Jesus Christ. And why is it important that we have this Christian faith? And how do you share it in a normal language? Well, you can find out everything you need to. Agapé.org.uk. Head over there. They're on the socials as well. And there's loads of free resources available. But this is really interesting because as Christians, we believe that God loves all people from all places. And he doesn't look at people from Manchester. I mean, he should do, but he doesn't look at people from Manchester and say, wow, you're better than the Cockneys, aren't you? And he doesn't look at people in South Africa and think, wow, you're wonderful. But these people in Canada, they aren't quite as good, are they? We are all equal, regardless of our colour, our shape. And it's a beautiful thing, isn't it, that, Lesley?
It is really beautiful, because it's the fact that we have all been created in the image of God. He's created us, and like we have a mark of God on us because we're created in his image. And I think that is really wonderful. And so that's part of why our uniqueness is really important, because we've all been made and created by a creator God who knows us and who loves us in a very personal, individual way. And I think that's something that's really important. Sort of when talking to people about faith, is understanding that it's not just an ideology, that actually we're talking about a living God who actually knows us and loves us and created us for a personal relationship with him. And I think that's one of the things that's really beautiful, is to, when you see people discover that sense of self-worth, because when they realize that they're not just an accident, they're not just born because somebody's chosen to have them. They're born because they are, they have been created by God, and he knows them and he loves them, and he has a wonderful plan for their life, which is to be in deep relationship with him. And I think that's truly wonderful, is for people to understand that they may just feel like, I'm just one small tiny person on a planet of 700 or 7 billion. I'm going to not get the number right. One less than 8 billion.
Come on, have a guess at it.
Just not going to even try that. That's embarrassing. But I could just I'm just one, a small insignificant person. But every person has significance because they're created by a God who loves them. And I think that's something to communicate to people. And a really important part of that is to actually get to know a person, as well as actually to hear and understand their story. Because actually, as we sit with someone and we understand their story and their uniqueness, how God has made them and the life that they've lived so far, it kind of communicates real value and dignity to a person. I remember a few years ago, I was doing some work in a refugee camp on the island of Lesbos, and we were doing a craft afternoon for some women in the camp, and I was sitting next to this girl who she was a teenager, and her name was Sahir, and I asked her, we just talking about the craft that we're making, and hearing each other's names and finding out how old we are and all those kind of questions. And I said to her, "What are your hopes, Sahir?" And she stopped and she welled up, her eyes welled up with tears, and she said, "I want to be an eye doctor." I was like, wow. And I was like, there's a story behind this. So hearing just that bit of hearing just that little hope and aspiration that she had, well, quite a big hope and aspiration actually, kind of led the way to a greater conversation. And she told me her story of how she and her family got to Lesbos, where they'd fled from, and how her dad, who was a hero, who taught her English. I was like, your English is so good. She's like, my dad taught me English, was blind. And as a result of that, her aspiration was to be an eye doctor in order to help people like her dad. And it's just, when you sit with somebody and you see them as a person in front of you, and you start to be interested in them and ask them questions and really listen to the answers to their questions, it builds towards another question and another question to really understand the person that's before you. And actually, as you do that, it's a really powerful encounter, I think, when you really sit and listen to somebody and hear their story. That's quite a dramatic story that she had, a really hard story. But we all have our own stories, and giving each other the time of day to sit and listen to one another's stories, it's a really powerful thing, and helps somebody to realize that they're not insignificant, that they are unique and valued and have worth. And I think it's really important.
And how do you and the team at Agapé, how do you help people to realize that they are loved? Because that can be so much of the battle, can't it? Like, even if we have chosen that journey to follow Christ, it is difficult to think, how can he love me because I've done this, I've
Mm,
done that?
mm.
But it doesn't matter, does it?
No, and I think this is when it's really important to talk about Jesus. Because when we actually talk about Jesus and talk about who Jesus was and is, the fact that when somebody realizes that what Jesus came to achieve through his life 2,000 years ago, but what he achieved through his death and resurrection, and that he's alive today, it starts to create this understanding of the power of God's love in our lives. And because we realize that we're, whatever's happened in our lives, however we've messed up, often we don't feel lovable because we know we've messed up. But when we realize that there's a God who knows us, who created us, who loves us, who's forgiven us because of his son Jesus, we start to realize the enormity of God's love when we understand what Jesus did for us. So I think that's really important. It's really important to talk about Jesus. Sometimes we can talk about God and it's a little bit like God's just out there, a little bit far away. And we talk about Jesus and the person of Jesus. It brings faith really, really close because we understand our faith is in a person, the person of Jesus, who is alive today.
And I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a video doing the rounds. It's not new. It's been going around for a long time, but it's called A Man Fell in a Hole. And if you haven't watched it, I'll send you the link when we've finished. I may even put it on our socials. I think if you scroll, well, you'll have to scroll back a bit, but if you go to videos on our Facebook page, I think it's up there. And it's an incredible analogy of the difference between Christ and any other religion. And it's a man in a hole. And basically, he wants to get out of the hole. And different spiritual leaders walk past. And one of them says that actually you have to believe that you're not really in a hole. And when you believe you're not in the hole, you won't be in the hole. And all this kind of stuff. And it's really clever. And then the last one is, it says the next man came, but he was different. And all it shows is this rope being thrown down the hole. And Jesus coming down into the hole, picking up the man and carrying him out of the hole on his shoulders. And then the camera pans and the man's gone. And the man who was in the hole is just on the ground. And there's a cross next to him, which has been planted. And it is so powerful. It's only about 3 minutes long. I will send it to you because it's a beautiful thing. But if you have a look on YouTube, it's called something like A Man Fell in a Hole. And you'll see it. It's a remarkable analogy of why we believe in Jesus Christ.
I love that.
It is always a pleasure. And once again, I want to direct you to the Agapé website because maybe you're struggling in your faith at the moment. Maybe you work in an organization where you're the only Christian and you feel that you're being sort of tied into gossip around the kitchen and you want to think, actually, I do want to share my faith. I don't want to get caught up in all this. What do I do? Well, there's resources available on their website. You can also follow them on the socials as well. They're frequently putting up good inspirational stuff. They're solid content. Agapé.org.uk is the website, and check them out on the socials. Give them a follow. And Lesley, always a pleasure. Live from your office there, looking very nice. Quite a big office, isn't it, that?
It is. Well, and lots of people like to use my office because it's big meeting space in here. But yeah, just getting a great view into the Agapé hub today. It's like, I'll show you around. Like, here you go. It's a lot bigger outside my office.
Very nice. Clearly a trip to IKEA with the light behind you there as well.
Oh yes, Agapé, sponsored by IKEA.
Lesley, you and the team are a blessing. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again next week.
Thanks, Gareth.